about the sequence of Anapanasati and its connection with a sequence found in the sutta called the Chula Vedalla Sutta. And the sequence found in the Chula Vedalla Sutta is all about the cessation of perception and feeling. It's a very profound sequence, taking really Samadhi, taking the path all the way to the conclusion. So it is a much more profound way of looking at samatha than what we find in the Anapanasati Sutta. If you want to continue Anapanasati and take it even further and go into all the most profound states of Samadhi, then you can, and that's when you start that sequence found in the Chula Vedalla Sutta. But really, the process in Anapanasati is really only up to the Jhana states, and it sort of stops there. Okay, so let's get on to tonight's questions. Okay, it's good, huh? Okay, dear Ajahn, today my breath became really subtle and felt like it disappeared. I felt peaceful and very, very still. But I did not sense the brightness. Am I missing something here? You are never missing anything. You're only missing something if you crave for something more. That's when you're missing something. If you don't crave for anything more, you are so content and happy, even by just being really, really still and peaceful. So don't think about what you're missing. Enjoy what you have. Stay with what you have. Don't try to think about what else. And as you stay with what you have, you tend to develop by itself. Don't worry about if there is anything more at that particular point, because all you do is disturb the process that you actually already have. One of those very important things of meditation practice is just to be really sublimely content with what is already happening. Never look to the future. Instead, what you should do is you should look at the things that you do outside of meditation practice and see if you can do something with that. And then gradually your meditation will improve, but not because you think about it, because you look toward it, but simply because that is the nature of things. It becomes more profound. So try not to look too much into the future or to what might be there. So then gradually the brightness will come all by itself eventually. Whenever the mind is ready, it will just happen. You cannot force the mind to be ready anyway, so it doesn't really help very much to think about what you should do. So just stay with the things. And occasionally what you can try, and you can try this very gently but without any craving, you can try to use some kind of reflection that gives rise to a bit of joy, so that you get the beautiful breath arising. Any kind of meditation, any kind of thought that brings a wholesome sense of spiritual joy into the practice can be very useful. Feeling lucky about your Kalyana Mitta, a little bit of a thought of metta, finding some of the perceptions maybe that we use tonight or something like that. Anything that kind of helps you to find joy in the practice. But try it very gently, no force, and see if it works. If it doesn't work, let it go and come back to the breath again. Have no expectations. Never think that you're missing anything. Just enjoy what you have now. Okay. What is the link between the 5 hindrances and the 5 sense spheres? The 5 hindrances and the 5 sense spheres. The link is that it is usually in relation to the 5 sense spheres that the hindrances arise. So you have the 5 sense spheres and you are attracted by the objects of those sense spheres. Then craving arises, the first hindrance, kama chanda. So that is really the link, the 5 sense spheres. This is the realm in which the hindrances tend to play. They play in that realm of the 5 sense spheres. When you leave the 5 sense spheres behind and there's only the mind is left, there's no hindrances there. So the ill will also exists in relation to the 5 sense spheres, and all of these hindrances, that's really where they hang out. So this is one of the disadvantages of those 5 sense spheres, one of the reasons why it is so nice to kind of just leave it behind and move on to the next sphere, the sphere of the mind instead. Dear Ajahn, we are served beautiful food daily. Okay, wow, you are so lucky here. I'm lucky, we're all lucky here. It's really nice. All these people come all the way from Perth, traveling out, cooking for over 60 people, 65 people every day. They do it for free, traveling all this way. It is absolutely a miracle. It really is amazing that these things can happen. It says something about the really strong Buddhist community we have right here in Perth. It's absolutely marvelous. So indeed, how can one use the Dhamma practice to stop indulging in too much food? Oh, remember that the reason people bring food all this way is that so you can enjoy your meditation practice. Yeah, if you eat too much and you come in here in the afternoon, you're going to be nodding away and you won't hear a word of the Dhamma talk because you're going to be snoring away. There's always someone snoring. Actually, tonight there was no one snoring. Usually there's someone snoring during the Dhamma talk, or especially during the meditation. During Dhamma talk, people can usually stay awake, but during meditation, there's always someone snoring. Which is kind of good. Yeah, people are really relaxing and letting go. It's a wonderful thing that people can do that. So you have a sense of sympathetic joy when somebody snores. Yeah, they can really let go, which is good. Don't feel too. It's never nice to feel self-conscious. So if you're not snoring away, it means you're not feeling self-conscious at the very least, which is great. So it is hard, yeah, because you are not used to not eating in the afternoon, so it's difficult. As for monastics, we are already used to it, so we kind of tend to know how much to take. We're not really afraid that we're going to get hungry in the afternoon. But if it is rare for you to be on the 8 precepts, you have this fear. Yeah, what if I get hungry in the afternoon? Isn't that right? You had this fear there, so you eat a bit extra just in case. Don't do that. Yeah, leave that out. Be mindful when you're eating. Feel very clearly what is happening, what is enough. And there's always a little bit extra you can have in the afternoon. This is the wonderful thing about having some of these, we call them medicines. I'm not sure if medicine is the right word. They're probably more like anti-medicine, probably make you more sick in the long run. It's good it only lasts for 9 days. And then, but you have that, so you can eat a little bit in the evening, which is wonderful. So don't be afraid, just try to feel what is right. Be mindful while you're eating, stop in time. Otherwise, the afternoon is going to be so much more difficult if you don't do that. It's nice when the body is just nice and light. Yeah, it is not too heavy, and nice and light, just perfect for meditation practice. That's when you feel really good about yourself. And also, it will make the people who bring the food much more happy if they know that you're eating just the right amount. They will think, yay, I'm supporting these wonderful people meditating away. So, and that's actually a wonderful thing to think about in your meditation, how fortunate we are to be able to have people who come all this way, bringing food that they have made with their own effort for 65 people, using their own money, their own resources, just bringing it here. It's amazing. It really is astonishing that people do these things. And it's enough to inspire you and to bring you some extra joy in your meditation when you think about that. It's a wonderful thing here. And as a monastic, I try to think about this almost every day, because we just sit in the monastery and the food arrives every day. It's kind of amazing. And then it's actually very inspiring, very beautiful. And it makes you, sometimes that makes you practice a bit better because you understand all the support that you rely on and you get from the other people. It's so beautiful. And now you can feel a bit like that. Why? Because now everyone here is a bit like a monastic. Yeah, this is what monastic life feels like a little bit. You're on 8 precepts, you're not really enjoying an entertainment, you are kind of going for alms every day. Yeah, this food comes in, this is what going for alms is all about. So you're a monastic. So do you like it? You're like, okay, come up here, line up, we'll get you, put on some real robes for you. Okay, anyway, so that is that one. Dear Ajahn, if I don't get it right this life, are there Buddhist monasteries in the heavenly realms to continue my practice? Or am I just going to get lost in sensual realm and forget my practice with metta? Thank you. Are there Buddhist monasteries in the heavenly realm? I don't know if they have. Maybe you can be the first one to build a monastery in the heavenly realm. Yeah, that can be your intention when you get up there. And you kind of, you get some help from all of these other gods and you build a beautiful monastery here. Actually, not too beautiful. Yeah, that's the problem with the sensual realm. Just right. So the point is, and this is what is interesting about the suttas, is that there are a lot of devas who are Buddhists. You go up there and you hear the Dhamma teachings when you get reborn in the heavenly realm, and you think, yay, I know this. And then your memory arises that you've heard these teachings before. And so you know you are in the company of Buddhists, and you can hear the Dhamma in the heavenly realm. Isn't that amazing? That's actually straight from the suttas. And this is one of the advantages of hearing the word of the Buddha rather than hearing all kind of idiosyncratic Buddhist teachings. Because if you hear the word of the Buddha, you know what the Buddhist teachings are, and you will recognize it in the heavenly realm because it is the same teachings. If you hear too many idiosyncratic Buddhist teachings, you won't be able to recognize it because it will be too different from what is the general teachings are about. So it's very useful to know the word of the Buddha, at least reasonably well, and then that will enable you to recognize these things later on when you get reborn. So I personally don't think there's any problem with being reborn as a Deva. What's the problem? You're happy, Deva realm. It's good. Yeah, there's no problem. And you can have a Dhamma there as well, and it's great. So don't be too worried about these kind of things. I think these are sometimes we get these things slightly wrong, I think. Yeah. Anyway. Dear Ajahn, I'm not sure what to make of Mara. Is Mara an existential being much like the devil in Christianity, or is Mara a metaphor for evil? Mara in the suttas, there's two kinds of Mara. One is a metaphor, not so much for evil, but for being kind of attracted to the sensual world, like the tempter. Yeah, Mara as a tempter. It tempts you to indulge in sensual pleasures. It tempts you to indulge in the lower happinesses when there are higher happinesses to be experienced on the spiritual path. So this is the main purpose of Mara in the suttas. It's like a psychological force that drives you away from the spiritual path and towards the worldly things instead. Sometimes it seems that Mara is also a being in the suttas. In some suttas it is clearly a being. Whether this is just an extension of the psychological force, the metaphor, I'm not sure. I think by far the most important use of Mara in the suttas is as a metaphor for psychological states and not really as a real being. So is there a real being that kind of has a lot of power and tempts people? I'm not so sure. I think maybe not, perhaps, who knows? It's hard to really say. But the one you should focus on is the one that has to do with tempting you to kind of lead you in the wrong direction. So Mara is not evil quite in the same way as the Christian devil. Mara is more like someone who wants to have power over people. And because Mara wants to have power over you, Mara tempts you to stay in the sensual realm. Because as long as you are in the sensual realm, Mara is supposed to have power over you, because then they can kind of, dangle the carrots in front of your nose and you kind of run after like, some robot, because that's what you're interested in here. So that is to me, the most important part of Mara is that aspect of Mara. Okay. Can you briefly explain karma in Samadhi and deep states of Jhana? Can negative karma from the past lives be eliminated? Thank you, sir. It is not about eliminating karma. This is not the Buddhist path. This is the Jain, or Jain path, is the idea of eliminating karma. There is a couple of suttas that seem to have been influenced by the Jains that somehow has crept into the suttas in the Pali Canon, but shouldn't really be there. And these are the things that sometimes some Buddhists emphasize these suttas, but they shouldn't really be emphasized because they're not really what Buddhist teaching is about. So it is not about eliminating karma. The idea of practicing the path is to reduce the impact of past karma. That is one thing that is the idea. There's a famous simile in the suttas that is often mentioned, a simile of the little grain of salt. And the simile, the idea with this is like if you have a grain of salt, you have a certain size, and you have a glass of water like this, and you put a kind of a large grain of salt into the glass of water, then it becomes very salty afterwards. There's no salt in that water, that's good. So it becomes very salty. It becomes very hard to drink because there's a lot of salt compared to the amount of water that you have. The salt signifies the bad karma. The water signifies the good karma. So small amount of good karma, large amount of bad karma. The taste is very unpleasant. That is the unpleasant feeling of bad karma in the future. If you have the same amount of salt and you put it in a large basin of water, or even in a lake or a pond like the ponds we have down here, and then you taste the water, you won't be able to taste it at all. In the same way, if you've done a lot of good karma, you've done a lot of good things in your life, bad karma that you have made, the same bad karma will hardly affect you at all. Yeah? And this is kind of what we're doing on the Buddhist path. You are diluting the bad karma you have made. You don't eliminate it, it doesn't disappear, but you dilute it, so you hardly experience it anymore. It's like, almost like you bypass it in a sense. This is one of the great benefits of practicing the spiritual path, is that things that you may have happened in the past that were very traumatic for you, gradually they fade into the background and they don't become so traumatic anymore, because it's almost as if it becomes diluted and it doesn't matter so much anymore. So this is the idea. And when you come to the jhanas, well, at that point, all of that will be completely gone. None of that really remains anymore. Any kind of negative experience or feelings will be completely transformed when you come to the jhana states. And they may re-arise again later when you lose that jhana tranquility, but for that period of time it's completely zapped out of existence. So that is kamma in that sense. There's lots more to be said about kamma or karma, but that is what you asked about, so if there's anything else, please let us know tomorrow. Dear Ajahn, in the sutta, the layperson who teaches monks was an anagami. Nowadays, is it a good idea to have lay people or even monks who are not yet advanced in the practice to teach Dhamma? Is it a good idea? It depends on how they do it. The idea is that if you follow the teachings of the Buddha fairly well, if you are well versed in the suttas and you know what the suttas are about, and you are honest about that and you do that well because you have a bit of experience at least, then it is possible for anyone to teach the Dhamma at least reasonably well, at least basic concepts. Yeah. So, but of course, if you are not well versed and you cannot teach the path to become an arahant, then you may have gone too far. Yeah. Teaching that may be kind of too difficult, but certainly you can start with the basic things and then gradually move up. So I don't think it is necessarily a bad idea. If you feel confident about your understanding, it can often be quite nice to teach. One of the great benefits of teaching is that you learn so much yourself. So I always say to people that if you want to teach, and you, as long as you are careful and you do it with integrity, take the opportunity, because it is a great opportunity, at least for yourself as a teacher, and hopefully you don't lead people completely astray. That would be bad, wouldn't it? So I think it's okay. It would be unfortunate if they teach wrong Dhamma and people believe in it, as in the case of secular Buddhists who teach that rebirth is not important, or Buddha did not teach rebirth. Yes, I agree with that. I think it's very unfortunate that secular, so-called secular Buddhists teach these kind of things. And certainly, I don't know what to say about it, except that, you know, I think gradually, remember that Buddhism is still very new in large parts of the world. It's only come to many of the Western countries quite recently. It's only been a few decades. People are still learning about it, trying to figure out what it is. Most people haven't really got much of a clue. They're kind of fumbling in the dark. But I think as we carry on, and there's always going to be some, you know, discussions in the early days when a new teaching arrives in a new culture, I think gradually people will get that rebirth is a fundamental part of Buddhism. It is just because they haven't really studied enough yet, they haven't really looked at the suttas, they haven't really been honest about what is there, they have been given the wrong ideas by a few scallywags around who kind of give people wrong ideas. And that's how this happens. But I think in the long run, it will be very clear that rebirth is part of Buddhism. And what that will mean is that some people may no longer consider themselves Buddhists, because they may say, well, if rebirth is part of Buddhism, then I'm not a Buddhist. And they might kind of go away. And that's okay. Yeah, it's fine. It's not a problem. They can maybe take other parts of Buddhism and be kind of partial Buddhists or whatever. Take some of the other ideas, still practice meditation, do good things. But they may reject that. But it is important to be honest about what is in the suttas. So I fully agree with that. Also, wouldn't it be a hindrance for their own practice to go out and teach instead of practice more, to have a little bit of insight before sharing their understanding with others? Yes, the more you know, the better it is. The deeper your insight, the more powerful it is. The best thing is to be an arahant. Unfortunately, there wouldn't be many teachers in the world if we had to rely on arahants. How many arahants are there in the world? Do you know? Not many, yeah, not many arahants in the world. I sort of, sometimes you look around, you wonder, you know, you're not sure if there are any. Maybe there are a few, but not many. There are a few people I have in mind who might be arahants, but it's hard to know. How many aryas, how many noble ones are there in the world? More, obviously more than there are arahants, but it's very hard to say. I would say not that many. Yeah, you are very lucky if you stumble across an arya in this lifetime. It's not easy to find. So sometimes we have to settle for lower standards because there just aren't teachers out there who can teach these things. Sometimes it's better to have a discussion, and then you have a discussion, and then hopefully something good comes out of these discussions so that you learn something. If you don't say anything, if everyone is just quiet, then it may actually even be worse. Hopefully, in the long run, we iron out the problems and people get more clarity about what is going on. But in the short run, you may have to sometimes be happy with partial results. And it's not just among lay people. There are lots of monastics around who teach crazy things, absolutely nuts. It's just you shake your head at sometimes at the kind of things that you hear in so-called Buddhist circles. And some of these are just like sects and cults who have kind of crazy idea about Buddhism, and often they are very large, they have massive followings, are ultra rich and all these kind of things. And so it's not just about lay people not understanding, it's a general problem in Buddhism around the world. It's actually quite difficult to find really good teachers. It's not an easy thing here. And I don't think we should blame the lay people for that. I think we need to kind of share the blame around a little bit. And not really blame anyone, really, because blaming is not very useful. But it is a problem everywhere. So we all need to be very careful and very circumspect when it comes to these teachings. So don't believe things too easily. Yeah, don't kind of follow after some charismatic teacher just because they are very charismatic. Ask yourself whether they're teaching the right thing. When I teach here, ask yourself whether what I'm saying makes sense or not, or whether it is in light with the suttas. Don't believe what I say. Yeah, I don't know. I try my best to teach real teachings, but I, like anyone else, will make mistakes. So don't just believe what I say. Look at it carefully, and then judge for yourself. And this is what we should do all the way around, always, regardless of who the teacher is. And then hopefully we can grow in the Dhamma in a good way, every one of us. Okay. Dear Bhante, while doing Metta Meditation, piti arises quite easily, a sensation of warmth in my upper chest. It feels so good. Wonderful, that's great. But this never seems to happen during breath meditation, and without joy, I don't feel like doing breath meditation. It is indeed quite peaceful, but dry at the same time. Kindly help. Maybe it's, no, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say something, but that's not really helpful to say. Sometimes you know you're about to say something. Maybe you shouldn't say that, so you hold back. That's kind of good. So what you can do, and this is where the idea comes in of kind of mixing up the meditations a little bit. You can start out with the breath meditation and do it for a while, and then you can just and then you can put some of that metta into the breath meditation. Yeah, you can look at the breath in a certain way. You can look at the breath like a friend, like something that has supported you for a long time, and it's almost as if you can have metta for the breath right there and then. You can use some of the perceptions that you have developed in your metta meditation, because some of those perceptions that you have, when you look at beings in a certain way, as you say, you feel pity because you're seeing something nice, something beautiful there. Bring that into the breath meditation. Take a short pause in the breath to bring up the perception that gives rise to that piti. Bring it in with the breath, and then see if you can carry on. This is the kind of combining these meditations a little bit. They don't have to be completely separated from each other, and then see what happens. Either that, or you can start out doing the metta meditation, and when you got a nice feeling of piti, try to transfer that piti onto the breath, and then carry on with the breath meditation. So experiment a little bit, try a little bit, try a few things, see if you can make it work together. The idea is that the breath meditation is so taught in so many different places. I think it is very useful to try to make that work. So it's really worthwhile, a bit of experimentation and trying, see what happens. So good luck with that and see how you go. Okay, dear Ajahn, I always wonder why the two meditation teachers of the Buddha who were very advanced and superior in meditation and jhana did not attain awakening, but ended up in the arupa realm, which is still part of samsara. What's gone wrong in the process? What should we watch out for in this quest for awakening? Thank you. It's a good question. We say that the Noble Eightfold Path ends with jhana. So if these people had such incredibly profound meditation, how come they weren't awakened? And the answer actually is very simple, because samma samadhi, right samadhi, is not just jhana. That's not enough. Samma samadhi is jhana supported by the other 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes right view. And the problem with these two teachers were that they were probably of the Brahmin caste. They probably practiced some kind of Brahmanical teachings, and so they would have had ideas of a kind of God, Brahma, and when they went into very deep samadhi, they would have thought, wow, union with Brahma, okay, good, I don't have to do anything else. So your view of the jhana states will depend entirely on the view you have before you get there. And this is what is so radical about the Buddha. The Buddha, he doesn't bring that view with him. He says, he gets a jhana state and he says, well, I've got this state. I don't want to make any assumptions about it. How do I go even beyond this? This is why the Buddha is so radical. So the presuppositions that you bring with you into the meditation is what makes you interpret it in a certain way. And that's why they didn't go any further. So this is why right view is such an important factor on the path. Otherwise it stops you from going all the way to the end of the path. Dear Ajahn, I am stressing out a bit about nimitta. That's no good. Okay. I think I have been chasing it as a goal. Can I let it go? Absolutely, you can let it go. You must let it go. I order you to let it go. Let it be. Don't chase it. Don't chase anything. Enjoy what you have. Enjoy what is there now. Do the right thing, relax, enjoy. Nimitta will come on its own. Nimittas come when you least expect them. Nimittas don't come on demand. So don't expect it, then it will come. Expect it, no way it will come. So don't chase it as a goal. So that's exactly right. Number 2, what actually is rapture? Is it something like nimitta I could achieve someday, maybe? Many thanks. Rapture is joy. Yeah, it is the happy feeling inside of you when you feel that you've done something well, you have lived in the right way. Rapture is a kind of Buddhist, is a word that is sometimes used in Christianity as well. It's just a kind of fancy word for saying joy, really. But it is a joy that is often, as I said before, physical. You can feel it in the body. It can feel like waves of pleasure going through the body, that sort of thing. Yeah, or it is also mental. It varies quite a bit in how people experience this. You can feel a bit like goosebumps or something like that, but it's a very pleasant feeling here. So that is really rapture. Very often you start off with a bit of joy in the mind, and then that joy increases, the rapture comes, and then the rapture calms down, they become even more pleasant. It's like this process you have to go through. Degrees of joy, degrees of happiness as the meditation progresses. So that's really all it is. It's a kind of joy that you experience. Okay, dear Ajahn, with my limited understanding of the way of insight meditation is taught by some teachers, one starts training on breathing in contemplating impermanence, breathing out, contemplating fading away, etc. If so, do they really start from the steps number 4 according to the Anapanasati Sutta by bypassing Kaya Vedananupassana? Appreciate your comment, sir. That is a kind of quite a shallow way of contemplating that impermanence. Yeah, it is. You're not going to get very far with that. Just contemplating the impermanence and fading away of the breath in the present moment is not going to be very powerful. I would say not very useful. Much better than doing that is to take the samatha, the calm, as far as you can. Because the further you take it, the more things you will have to contemplate, the more things will have changed, the more things will have faded away, the more things will have ceased, and then you have some real data that you can contemplate. Just breathing in and focusing on the breath is not really all that useful. What the sutta says, it says breathing in, I contemplate aniccanupassi sikkisami or something like that. It doesn't say that you should contemplate the breath as impermanent. It says you contemplate impermanence. So the breath is just kind of the background. Yeah, it's the kind of it's there because it is the breath meditation. So it's still in the background, but it's not the specific thing that you contemplate the breath in that moment. This is more like a recollection of what has happened in the past, and that can include the breath. You can see how the breath is getting more and more subtle, how the breath is fading away, and how the breath eventually is ceasing. Basically what you're seeing there is a cessation of the entire body. Yeah, because the breath is part of the body, so the whole physical realm is disappearing. That is really what you are seeing there. This is a far more useful contemplation than just looking at the breath as such. It is not going to get you very far at all, as far as I can see here. So try that. That's what I would recommend. Take the samatha, take the calming down as far as you possibly can, and then review that process afterwards. That is when you will get some really good results, because you're going to see the 3 characteristics very clearly at that particular point, because you've just been seeing it. You've just been watching this process and happening, and now when you recall it, it will be very clear in your mind what actually happened. Okay. Dear Ajahn, there was a story again that Venerable Mahakassapa was alone for a long time, sustaining his life on deep samadhi. In some legend also, it is said rishis can live perhaps more than hundreds of years. The story that Mahakassapa can sustain his life on deep samadhi is not found in the suttas. They are probably found in some commentary or some storybook. And all storybooks need to be taken with a big pinch of salt. Even the Buddha needed to eat. Yeah, if he could sustain his life on samadhi, he probably wouldn't eat, he probably wouldn't breathe, he probably wouldn't drink, probably do nothing. So it is the physical body. The physical body needs to sustain itself. Yeah, on food, on water, all these kind of things. Otherwise, you're going to die. And sometimes you hear these stories, and please take them with a massive pinch of salt, because they are usually dodgy stories. Rishis can live perhaps more than hundreds of years. The Buddha lived for 80, he had to die. I don't think these rishis are any better than the Buddha, so I doubt it again very much. Yeah. Maybe they can be very old. You hear these stories all the time. I don't believe these things. I'm just being honest with you. And I'm always very surprised that people sometimes believe these things, because to me, it is just... I've seen so many stories in my life, so many stories of supernormal powers and all kind of things. And one of the things I always found out is that it is never the person who tells you is never the person who saw it. The person who saw is always one step removed, always, yeah? Every time. And after a while, I don't believe these things anymore, yeah? And after a while, you just realize that, and I live in the middle of this, yeah? I have these kind of sort of monks around me all the time. So after a while, you become incredibly skeptical of these stories. We like to believe things. We see things often that are not necessarily there. We make things up. It is so easy for these things to happen. And I have been present sometimes at certain things, certain events, and other people told me that this was a supernormal thing happening. I was there. It was not a supernormal thing. I know. I saw it for myself. I just shake my head in disbelief sometimes what people say and what people believe in. So take all of this stuff with a big, big dose of salt because it is so utterly, completely unreliable. Stay with the things that really are tangible, like the meditation practice, the kind of deepening of the meditation. Stay with things that kind of make sense, that you can potentially believe in because you have some experience for yourself. All the other stuff, you don't have to reject it completely, but when you hear stories, be very, very careful. One of the problems is that these things are often very impressive, and people think that when they have some kind of supernormal power, it's some kind of proof of something very spiritual going on. But remember what the Buddha said about supernormal powers. He said that he detested supernormal powers. He was disgusted by them. And this is found in the Kevada Sutta and the Digha Nikaya 11. Why? Because those people who already have faith, they will say, marvelous, wonderful, look at these supernormal powers. But those who don't have faith will say, yeah, it's just another magic trick. Yeah, what do you expect? This is what happens. So it doesn't work. You can't turn people around. It's not really a good thing to use for getting people around to have faith in anything, because it is just more entertainment. That's what it is, isn't it? Entertainment. People flying through the air, going into the ground. It may look really impressive, but it's not going to do very much in the long run. So forget about that. It's easy to say, forget about that, but still we want to see it, right? I know what it feels like. Okay, anyway. Next one. Dear Bhante, when you said second most intention while doing an act of generosity is to arise joy in the mind and without expectation, I have experienced that, and it indeed is truly marvelous. Okay, wonderful. That is great. Well done. But the foremost intention, it may be a jewel to the mind, an ornament to the mind. I understood that theoretically, but not practically. It seems to me when I think about that before giving, it gives rise to expectation and does not seem like I am giving with my pure heart. Kindly shed some light, Metta. So you give because you know that these things are going to be powerful in your practice in the future. Don't give with an expectation to feel anything in particular. Don't give because it's going to give you some result straight away. Just give knowing that down the track this will be a requisite, it will be a tool, in your tool bag that you will be able to use to in the future to help your meditation practice. So it has got nothing to do with the present moment. Yeah, in the present moment, all you do is you just give in the good way. If you can give, as you said here, just for joy, yeah, give like that. But knowing at the same time, this is more like a knowing. It's more like the understanding that these things will be powerful requisites that you then use in your meditation and the spiritual path later on. So you give something here and now simply because you know it will have future benefits. And that future benefit will be far greater if, as you say here, you can give with joy in the present moment. So you're doing all the right things already. Just add that knowledge that this will be very useful on the spiritual path down the track. Okay. Dear Ajahn Brahmali, thank you for the discourse on the passing of the Buddha and poor Venerable Ananda being possessed by Mara. This is my view for your consideration. It is not that the Buddha can't make a decision. I think he was trying to build capacity, leadership capability in contemporary language amongst his disciples to ensure the Dhamma is alive today and beyond. In simple terms, he was trying to encourage his disciples to get their act together here. Thank you, Ajahn. They need to strategize, develop, cultivate, and persevere the Buddhist teachings. If that's what he tried, he certainly failed miserably, didn't he? He didn't get much leadership out of Venerable Ananda. So maybe, who knows what was actually going on? It's very hard to say. So anyway, good. Okay, dear Ajahn, how do we distinguish between restraining and suppressing? Thank you. Okay, so the difference is that suppression happens through an act of will, but restraining does not necessarily happen through an act of will. Restraining can happen through an act of wisdom. That is the difference. An act of wisdom means to turn your mind in a different direction, looking at the same problem, the same object in a different way. That is all it is really. That is the act of wisdom. So, for example, if you are really keen on that Ferrari, the same Ferrari, by the way, we talked about a few days ago, not a different one, the same one. If you're keen on a Ferrari, you remember the downside of Ferraris. They are blooming expensive. Insurance premium very high. If you crash it, you're going to feel really bad. And the chance of crashing it are really high because it's so tempting to drive way too fast. You get massive traffic fines, you lose a driving license, and you can't have your family in the car. Big downsides, yeah? So it may look very attractive, but actually the downside is, of course, much worse than that, because the downside is like all of these things in samsara. You just get attached to them and it leads to suffering and problems and all of that. So you take the Ferrari, you forget your mind, you lose your mind a little for a moment, you think, wow, beautiful car, and suddenly mindfulness kicks in and you remember the downside. Okay, forget about that blooming Ferrari, doesn't matter, who cares about Ferraris anyway? And you just let it go. Yeah, it's just a temporary kind of attachment to this Ferrari that you see. They're pretty cool cars when you see them in the street. You see them, whoa, it's hard not to kind of look at them. Even after being a monk for 25 years, I don't want a Ferrari, but when I see one, it still looks kind of attractive. Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, that's how it works. Same thing with anger and upset. Yeah, why do you get angry with people? Because you look at them in the wrong way. Always have compassion for people. Everyone is suffering in this whole world. If people do bad things, they are worthy of compassion. Why? Because they don't know what they're doing. They're blind. They are moving around, making bad karma for themselves. If people make bad karma for themselves, causing suffering for themselves in the future, actually, when you know that they really want to be happy, you just have to have compassion. How can you not have compassion? They are just blind. They are hurting themselves. They're acting like their own enemy. This is straight from the suttas. You're acting like your own enemy when you're treating other people badly and you're being immoral. Have compassion. It's the only right way of looking at people when they do bad things. And then after a while, you can't get angry anymore. All you have is compassion and care and kindness for people. Yeah, and then it's such a beautiful thing when anger has a hard time arising. This is what I mean. This is what using wisdom power is about. Shift the way you look at the object. It's a trick of perception. It's a trick of the way you think about things. We'll get back to this more later on. Dear Ajahn, the Anapanasati seems so advanced to me. Yes, it is true, isn't it? It is actually quite advanced, and for many people, you don't even get to the first stage. There are 16 steps, and I can't even get to the first one, people say. I can't even see the short breath, or the long breath, which is the first one. And that's okay, it's all right, yeah, it is quite advanced. Remember, it starts off with going to an empty hut, yeah, it starts off with giving rise to mindfulness, just being able to sit quietly down, closing your eyes, having clarity of mind, with not many thoughts going on in your mind. You know, even that is actually quite nice already, and a lot of people can't do that. So please don't feel bad about it. You are just one of many people who are having the same problem. It's perfectly okay here. How is one who is a novice in meditation to practice it? You again start by giving rise to mindfulness, and if you find even that part of it hard, which some people do, then just just try to enjoy just being here, sitting here. Just sit back, enjoy sitting down, and just enjoy the peace and the quiet of what is happening. And suddenly one day your mind goes quiet, and you realize where you were trying to get all along. And all that trying was actually what was getting in the way. Just be here. Yeah, it's a nice place to be here, hanging out with your good mates. Yeah, it's kind of nice. And then you just suddenly, because you know this is nice, suddenly everything becomes quiet. If that doesn't work, do a bit of metta meditation. Metta meditation is more active. Yeah, you kind of spread around the metta, the kindness to people in the whole world. See if you can get that going. Use a guided meditation to help you to get it going if you're having a hard time. And it's a bit more active. It means that you're using your mind more purposefully. It's often can be easier than just allowing the stillness and the sati to arise. You can also do death contemplations. I'm going to do a guided death contemplation, I don't know, one of these days, and see when it kind of feels right. And then you can do that sort of thing as well. Or you can do walking meditation, go outside, just walk, enjoy the peace and quiet, allow things to calm down. Don't try too hard. Trying too hard is going to cause problems for you. It's going to be difficult. So don't, if you get very, very frustrated, if you try really hard and you don't get there, you get incredibly frustrated. And this is what happens with some meditators. They give up after a while. You never see them again, and they end up, I don't know what they end up as, but something else. And you never hear from them afterwards, because they think meditation is rubbish, can't be done, it's impossible, and then they just disappear. So also, I've been to classes where the teacher takes the whole class through 16 stages. Needless to say, I was lost even before getting to the 4th. Thank you, Ajahn. This idea of the teacher taking the whole class through 16 stages of Anapanasati, it means they haven't really understood what it is about. You can't do that. You can bring people to the door of these things. I would say if you can take people to the first step or the second step, you can't really take them much beyond that. Because once you start to become mindful of the whole breath, it is already incredibly peaceful. You can't really talk anymore. You don't want to talk anymore at that stage. I don't see how you can take people through that. Really, you teach people the basics, and then after you get, especially when you get to kind of a bit of joy in things, you basically have to be on your own. Yeah, it's the only way, because these are very profound things, and I think it is a misunderstanding. I don't know who that teacher was. I think it is a profound misunderstanding of what Anapanasati is about, if you supposedly guide them through all the 16 steps. I think that is not really, doesn't work that way. Okay. Dear Ajahn, thank you for your time and teachings thus far. You are doing a splendid job. Okay, that's very kind of you to say that. Sadhu times 3. Non-self is often mentioned in Buddhism. If there is no self, who is the one who is trying to become an arahant? If there is no free will, who is making the decision to come to this retreat? With gratitude. Well, it's not you, we know that much. So what is it? Well, what it is, it's just conditioning. Yeah, you have been conditioned to come on this retreat, so you are like a robot. It's like you say yes, sir, to the conditions, and you kind of walk along like an automaton. Yes, I will go to the retreat. That's what happens. And it is very hard to see this, and the reason why it is hard to see is because it feels like we have free choice. Yeah, it feels inside that you're making choices all the time. But how realistic is that? How true is it that you are actually making those choices? And there has been some very interesting experiments done in recent times about the will that we have. And some of those results are quite astonishing. So one of the results is that basically the decision is made in your mind before it feels like you are making the decision. Once this decision has been made, afterwards you feel, yeah, I'm going to make this decision, and you make the decision afterwards. So the idea that it is you who made it comes after the fact that the decision has been made. Kind of remarkable. And it sort of confirms, if you like, the Buddhist idea that will is really a conditioned process rather than something that comes from a self or me. It has come with some cause and conditions coming together. Those cause and conditions, why do you come on the retreat? Well, because you have been going to Dhammaloka Center, you've been listening to Dhamma talks, you've been brainwashed, that's why you come here. Yeah, is that nice to be brainwashed? It's not bad, yeah, as long as the brainwashing is good, it's a good thing to be brainwashed. If the brainwashing is bad, it's a bad idea, so just choose your brainwashing wisely, and then you're in business. Who chooses the brainwashing wisely? Well, it's not you again, that's the scary part. It's just conditioning here. It's all conditioning, going back. So just be careful, be wise, yeah, and as wise as you can. That too is conditioned, but part of the conditioning is that you are conditioned to be careful, which obviously is a good thing. Yeah. Hopefully it is a good thing. Yeah. It is a good thing, yeah. So all of this, the reason you become an arahant is because you're listening to the teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha is brainwashing you, you're following his path. Yeah, you're just saying yes, sir, to the Buddha. Yes, master, and it dung, 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 dung. You follow along here. Yeah, it's like you're railroaded and you become an arahant. One day, whoop, I'm an arahant. Okay, how did that happen? Yeah, this is how it works. It's interesting. It is so counterintuitive. It feels like we have all this ability to make choices, and this is why it is so hard to see. So sometimes you just go along and you still act as if you have free will because you don't have any choice in the matter. We all, you feel like you have free will, so you use that feeling of freedom to make the best possible choices in life. You just have to do it that way. But it's an interesting thing. You may not believe this, and even if you don't believe it, at least consider it. And as you consider it, you may gradually see that there is some truth to it. You can probably see it already, that your choices are in large part conditioned, but actually seeing the depth of the conditioning, that is kind of the hard part. Okay. Dear Ajahn, it seems that we humans are subject to lustful desires, thoughts, urges due to our biological nature. Can you recommend the sutta which addresses overcoming, curbing of this problem? Biological nature, it is possible to overcome these things. If these things were purely biological in nature, you wouldn't be able to overcome them. The fact that you can overcome them means that the problem resides mainly in the mind. There may be a biological component, but the problem is really a mental one, and that's why you can overcome these things. Yeah, and the sutta to overcome this is very simple. I mentioned it today, the idea of why sensual desire arises. It arises because you are seeing the aspect of beauty in something. If you stop seeing the aspect of beauty in that thing, sensual desire will come to an end. Yeah, you will no longer be attracted to it. Because you stop seeing that beauty in things. So if you think that relationships are going to be beautiful and wonderful and delightful and full of joy and happiness, you're going to get into relationships, you're going to do it. If you think that relationships are not necessarily wonderful, they have a downside, then you may stay out of relationships. And then maybe become a monastic instead, perhaps. So it is really about how we focus. That is really all there is to it. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite little suttas later on this retreat, which talks about the 7 similes in regard to the sensual world, how to consider the sensual world in general. Not specifically lust, but just a general attitude, and that affects all aspects of desire within that world. So, yeah. I hope, let's talk more about it when we get to that sutta, because I still have a few more questions to go through, and I'll finish it off for this evening here. Ajahn, why is patience not explicitly mentioned in the 37 aids to awakening here? Anxiety, ego, and control seem to be the biggest hindrance in my meditation. These are also not exactly obvious in the 5 hindrances. Until you explain to us that restlessness is related to identification to self. Okay, so you added something there. Okay, patience, why isn't patience mentioned? Patience is mentioned elsewhere. Yeah, there's this beautiful verse in the Dhammapada which says patience is the highest austerity. So it is obviously recommended to be patient. It is also mentioned in the Sabbasava Sutta, the sutta on all the corruptions of the mind. And we have to patiently endure things. You know that there are certain things in life you cannot change, so you have to patiently endure. Things like pains in the body, sometimes you can't do anything about it. Sometimes the speech of people around you, you can't do anything about it, so you have to just endure, you have to be patient with it and allow it to be. So it is actually mentioned, but it's not specifically mentioned as one of the 37 aspects of the Dhamma. Why that is? Maybe because it is not a critical thing. It is not kind of absolutely critical for the path. And also, it may simply be that as you practice these other qualities, patience comes along as part of the other factors. Yeah, so when you practice virtue, the only way you're going to be able to really be virtuous and have restraint is by bringing patience into it. Otherwise, you won't be able to practice that virtue. So it comes, in a sense, as part and parcel of the virtue and some of these other things. Also, with meditation practice, the only way you're going to have success in meditation is by a lot of patience, being able to sit back and wait and allow things to happen. It takes a lot of patience as well. So patience is kind of included in there without necessarily being explicitly mentioned. Anxiety, ego, and control. Yeah, so these are problems, ego and control. Anxiety is a bit like finding fault with the future. Yeah, so it is about, it is a bit like perhaps fear is often mentioned in the suttas as a problem, one of the 4 agatis, being driven by fear. So that is a root problem on the path, and anxiety is really a kind of fear, isn't it? It's a fear about what will happen next. You are anxious about what might be happening next. So it is there, but it's not specifically a hindrance. And the point, I think, is that if you overcome the other hindrances, anxiety will also disappear. Yeah, it will just disappear as a consequence of the other ones. Because if you are not interested in the sensual world anymore and you don't have any ill will about that, there's nothing really much to have anxiety about. You cannot just shrug your shoulders and carry on, and there isn't much of a problem. So, how do you overcome anxiety? The way to overcome anxiety is by looking at alternative outcomes. You are anxious because you are seeing possible negative outcomes for the future. Think about the positive outcomes. Condition your mind to see alternative possibilities in the future. It's not easy to do necessarily, and it may take a lot of time, but remember that it is reconditioning of the mind is possible. It can always be reconditioned. Just be patient, carry on. So there you are, patient again. Carry on, and as you do that, you start to see things differently as you practice the path. But simply by practicing the path, anxiety will gradually diminish all by itself as well. If your anxiety is very severe, it might be useful to see a professional about that, someone who can give you some professional advice. But if it's not too severe, if it's kind of this ordinary anxiety that everyone has now and again, then I wouldn't be too bothered. It will just gradually disappear as you practice. Ajahn, how can deep samadhi lead to cessation of the skandhas when consciousness is still present? Thank you very much for the insightful talk this morning. How can samadhi lead to the cessation of the 5 skandhas when consciousness is still present? Well, if consciousness is still present, the 5 skandhas have not ceased. Yeah? So the 5 khandhas, skandha is kind of the Sanskrit version of that word, the 5 aggregates, we call them in English, the 5 aspects of personality. The cessation of these things only really happen in 2 different occasions. This is kind of getting into very deep territory now. 5 skandhas only really fully disappear when you practice samadhi all the way to the limit, sanya vedayita nirodha, cessation of perception and feeling, or parinibbana, when the arahant dies, cessation of 5 khandhas. So what I was talking about today was more partial cessation of these things. So some of the khandhas can cease, before the other ones. There can be partial cessation of these things. You can have the cessation of the rupa skandha, the body disappears. You can have cessation of the will, the sankhara khandha. You can have cessation in large part of the remaining 3 khandhas, but not completely. But that partial cessation is often good enough to give you a lot of insight. You don't actually have to have the full cessation to get profound insight into these things, but the more cessation you have, the more powerful it is. But the consciousness, the full cessation of consciousness does not happen during the process I was talking about in the Anapanasati Sutta. It happens much later on the path. Okay. Dear friends, okay, out of compassion for those with respiratory conditions and allergies, please may we keep all windows, etc., doors closed during the burn-off. Even a little smoke is too much for some and may mean discomfort and lack of concentration during a talk with metta. Okay, so there you are, keep all windows closed during the burn-off. Okay, so that was okay, good. So maybe keep that in mind. So I'm not sure whether you're talking about your cottage or where you're talking about. Probably the cottage. So if that is okay with everyone, maybe out of compassion that can be done. Okay. Dear Ajahn, was it patiga or patiba that was the resistance in the mind that caused it? Oh, patiga, patiga is the word found in Pali, which is the resistance. Can you say more? And it was interesting that we enjoy our thinking, restlessness and sloth. Actually, it's a bit threatening at times to give it up. Yes, so you give it up gradually, so it doesn't become too threatening. That's kind of the trick, really. Gradually giving it up, gradually it becomes, you kind of see the advantage of having clarity and stillness in the mind. So the patiga is just like seeing something that is, you resist, that you don't really want to see. That's why it's called resistance. You don't like it, you don't enjoy it. When you see it, you feel like you don't really want to have anything to do with it. And, like someone coming into the presence that you maybe had a difficult relationship with in the past, you don't really want to see that person. But so you have that resistance. And if they still stay there, after a while, it may give rise to ill will. Yes, that is really what it is about. This a resistance to the unpleasant in life. And if that unpleasant hangs around long enough, it may lead to ill will as a consequence. So the counter to that is either to just to be patient with certain things. You can just be patient because you realize that it's impossible to avoid anything that is gives rise to resistance. There are many things in life which I just have to deal with, just have to hang out with. Pains in the body I mentioned before, people saying bad things to you during the day, it happens all the time. Lots of things that you just have to endure in this life. And so you endure it because you know there's no choice. This life is like this. Yeah, you accept it as a fact, as a natural part of existence, and because a natural part, you can't do anything about it. You shrug your shoulders, you carry on, and you somehow deal with it. And other resistances, as I mentioned just before, how to deal with people. Yeah, have compassion for people. If you find someone who you find is difficult to deal with, just have compassion for that person if you can, because probably they are suffering a lot and they're having a hard time. And then when you have compassion, you overcome the resistance. I'll talk more about this later on, because there's a whole sutta coming later on about how to deal with ill will and these kind of things. Very, very useful stuff, because these are the kind of root things that everyone pretty much has problems with, at least to some extent. So very, very useful. So we'll have a look at that later on. Okay, last question for tonight. Dear Ajahn, after lunch I require a lot of time to be able to watch the breath peacefully again. Is this a sign that I am not eating mindfully? Maybe it's a sign of that. Maybe that as you eat, maybe your mind is going all over the place and you're thinking about all kind of things, and then you kind of afterwards you kind of have lost it a little bit. Sometimes it can be useful to just go back to your room after lunch and maybe have a little bit of a rest, lie down on your bed, yeah, and to kind of bring yourself back into a little bit of peace again after eating. That is often quite useful, and then when you maybe you even have a short nap, when you come out of your nap you often feel much better as a consequence. So it is good to be reasonably mindful while you eat. Don't overdo it, don't try too hard. If you try too hard and you don't enjoy your meal, that's also not so good. You have to, again, find that middle way between being reasonably mindful, but also it's okay to enjoy your meal, yeah? It is fine. What is not okay is sitting in meditation and thinking about food all the time. That is no good, yeah? But enjoy your meal when you have it. Perfectly, it's not a problem. It is, yeah. So, so the idea with eating is just, really, the idea is just that your mind does not get too disturbed, yeah. But again, don't put too much force into it. Sometimes people try to be mindful all the time, and all they end up being is becoming tense, yeah, and kind of feeling unpleasant. So don't go down that path. Don't take it too far. Just find that middle way, and then hopefully you'll be able not to be too distracted by the eating. So see how that goes. Have a rest after the meal and see how things go for you. Okay, that is all for tonight. So have a good rest tonight, and we'll see you back again tomorrow morning here.